Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And for our listeners out there and for Dr. Lopkin, excuse the sniffles. I have a little bit of a cold, but I'm sure I'll tough it out. How's that? All right.
Okay.
So, what's that?
I just said okay.
Yeah. So, anyway, um, we had the first thing I think that's right there in the news is Trump um, basically having his little anti-Semitic Thanksgiving uh, get together at Mar-a-Lago. A lot of repercussions, a lot of ramifications, a lot of blowback. We have Pierce Morgan basically saying, Don, lose Don or lose. And you also have Romney, who I'm not a huge fan of, saying that Trump is a gargoyle around the Republicans' neck, and you have Mitch McConnell saying, anti-Semites have no place in the Republican Party and no chance of winning. And finally, you have a rock star, an up-and-coming rock star, Kemp, newly reelected governor in Georgia, refusing to support Trump and also condemning the meeting from Acidville. What is it like? Return to the night? I mean, what do you want? Like, what are you thinking about? Explain to me, Dr. Lopkin.
Yeah, I have no idea what he was thinking, why he would have this meeting. It really is another death blow to his candidacy.
No, no, wait,
Uh,
because your insights are extremely important to our listeners. They're critical. Is it the end that, on top of the probable loss of Georgia, the senatorial runoff to the Trump endorsed candidate Herschel Walker, could this be just the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back? I think it is, but I would like your opinion, and so would our listeners.
oh, absolutely. Republicans in general are tired of Trump's antics.
But they were
They
before this. But the
they
critical
they
issue
they
is this
were
it?
before, but I don't know if this is it or not. Um, I have a problem with what some of the liberals are pulling with this meeting because they're yelling about, "Oh, this is proof that he's a Nazi." Like, I want to remind our listeners a little bit of history that the full name of the Nazi Party was the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Okay, the Nazis were not the conservatives, they were the socialists.
I understand 100%, and I agree with you on that. Obviously, looking at history, the point is total dumbass move. I do not think Trump is a Nazi. I don't know how many members of his family are Jewish, Kushner, among others, big support of Israel. But what the F are you thinking about, you
That's it. And
moron?
unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that because I cannot comprehend how he could be so stupid to have this meeting, especially given his relationship with Israel. Why would you have this gathering of anti Semites at your home in Mar a Lago? It makes no sense whatsoever. And I think it goes to show how far out of touch Trump has become.
No, wait a second. I think you had a really excellent point, and it needs further examination. How out of touch? I think it's basically like a Citizen Kane surrounding himself in the being onslaughted by press for 6 years. I think he surrounded himself in a bubble and became self delusional and talk about being out of touch. I mean, Kanye West is the butt of jokes from Howard Stern. I mean, what are you thinking about? And it's not just like off the cuff. The guy's an anti-Semite. He just is.
And I do understand that Trump and West have a relationship going way back. I'm pretty sure West was on The Apprentice with Trump. Um, but right after he makes anti-Semitic comments, you invite him to Mar-a-Lago. It's like, no, that's where you go. Okay, you know what? You put out a public statement saying, I've known him for a long time. I do not understand where this is coming from, but he needs to apologize. Did Trump
Okay,
do
Dr.
this?
Lopkin,
No.
how come you and I know that? We haven't been on the apprentice. We're not the. We didn't grow up in the media for 50, 40 years, whatever it's been. It's kind of, I'm sorry to say, common friggin' sense. And the thing about friendships, I've had a lot of friends over my lifetime, long-term friends. If one of them starts putting a Nazi flag out in their front
Yeah.
lawn, guess what? Kind of, they're not going to dinner with me. Hello.
Yeah. Again, I do not understand what he was thinking. It was just monumentally stupid, and the only thing I can think of that might start to explain it is that he's been so obsessed with his own ego, which he always has been, but it's gotten so bad that he's not even paying attention to what's going on in the outside world.
That's the only explanation. He's never had good judgment, and I'll even say business judgment. Bankrupt 3 times. Sorry, I mean, he's a great personality. His policies were great, but like I heard on another talk show, that he'd have a great policy by 10 o'clock, and by 12, he would shoot himself in the foot. And I think we said similar things
Yes.
on this show. I have to do ask you, though, when, not if, when Herschel Walker loses Georgia, is that another knife in Trump's back,
It
so to
is.
speak?
It's
That's
another
the
knife.
end.
It's another knife. I don't honestly think it's going to be the end until we get to the primaries because he is going to keep pushing through. And I believe he might make it to 3 or 4 primaries. I think he's going to lose every one of them. And that's when he'll finally go, okay, I can't win.
Okay, I agree with that. I don't know if he has scorched earth policies in a Hitler-esque way or not. We'll see how that unfolds in terms of a third party. I do not think he goes through the entire primary season. I think he loses early, just as you're saying. And you even have rock stars like Kemp, as we talked about, the reelected governor, who is a potential. People are buzzing about him in 2024, basically saying he cannot endorse Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell. I mean, they're just like, it's just a bridge too far. And I think he screwed up the midterms. I think with Trump out of the picture, they would have squeaked out a narrow victory for the Senate, but shit had endorsed the worst of the worst. Dr. Oz, smart enough guy, I get it, better than Fetterman, duh. But he didn't even live in. I mean, the worst possible candidate you could have against someone that's mentally incapacitated. Hello, great job, Donald.
Yeah, no, the problem is he endorsed people that were kind to him, that seemed to like him. He didn't endorse anybody based on their capabilities, but it's almost like the Democrats ticking off boxes, but in a personal way rather than in a woke way.
That's when ego takes
Yes,
precedent over reality, and that's exactly what you said at the beginning of this podcast.
exactly.
So, anyway, speaking of the midterms, the RNC is launching inquiries into the shitty performance and performances. If it wasn't for New York, okay, and a future rock star, the gubernatorial race, go, there's a good likelihood the Republicans would not have gotten the House either. So they're looking into it, and one editorial I read on that, reflecting upon this initiative in terms of investigating why they did so poorly overall, and one of them was I think the Republicans there was a huge Trump factor, not so much, not as much as people thought abortion factor, but there was a probably misread about how um, dissatisfied the electoral populace was. Most people still have a job. It's not 1979. Inflation's ramping up, but there's still a lot of money in people's, in people's households overall. We'll see how that chicken's going to come home to roost. But do you agree Or do you think there's the possibility that the Republicans and conservative media overrepresented how dissatisfied people are?
Actually, I don't think they did. Because if you take a look at the consumer confidence report, it's very low. People are extremely dissatisfied. I think the problem for the Republican Party was that, as dissatisfied as they weren't dissatisfied enough to risk Trump resurging.
A
I
hundred. You. Why didn't you write the editorial? Yes, 100% agreed. I think it was when you look at it, it's just, and again, we look at the future or lack thereof of Donald J. Trump. He was the boogeyman in the corner that didn't take a lot of effort to resurrect. And I think that was a bigger factor exponentially than abortion and other matters that people think, listen, things are screwed up, but I cannot take this shithead anymore.
And honestly, and I hate to say this, but I think a big part of it was the absolutely disgusting tactics of the DNC funding Republican candidates that they thought were going to be easier targets. I I know a lot of Democrats who were disgusted by this tactic, but it seems to have worked.
Yes, they basically put in place Trumpers or radicals that far right people that they thought. But isn't it kind of interesting and disgusting at the same time that they think, oh, Trump's such a threat to democracy, but yet they were willing to put his people, fund his people because they thought they'd be easier to defeat. If it's such a amazing and critical threat to democracy, then why are you funding these people?
Well, and again, they did try to hide the fact that they were
But they
funding
still
them,
did
but
it.
they still did it. And I've heard a lot of Democrats absolutely up in arms that their donations to the DNC went to do this. So I certainly hope they're not going to do it again, because their own party is, against them.
They'll do it again. One
But
thing about the Democrats, we
well,
talked about this.
I
I think they
I don't
will. I
know if
think
I
power
don't
is
know.
everything to them.
Yeah,
They'll
yes,
give it. They'll put Fetterman in.
but you're missing one thing. The man behind the strategy, the head of the DCCC, lost his position. He lost his election. So we'll have to see.
It's up for debate. I like that. Still focusing on the political landscape. There's reports that now McCarthy is facing is it his supposedly coronation as speaker is not as a slam dunk as it once was. You have forces like Marjorie Taylor Greene, which we have to talk about a little more, putting some monkey wrenches. Is she? We talk about the radicals, to be fair, and the nut jobs in the Democratic Party. This person's a nut job. She literally talked about a year ago or 2 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. But the fires on the West Coast were started by a Jew laser. Hello, is there anyone home?
Yeah,
Really?
no, the Republican Party needs to slap her down.
She's gaining
Um,
power.
well, again, we'll see, because the Republican Party sees what the radicals did to them in the midterms. So whether or not McCarthy was never going to have a coronation, there have been people after him for years. I think he's going to pull it out, because the moderates are going to go, no, you need to sit down and shut up, because you're starting to see this in both parties. Uh, 4 Democratic senators wrote a letter to Biden saying enough is enough with the border. We need to get our house in order. And sorry for the rhyme,
There you go.
but
I
yeah,
wasn't going to say anything.
I it wasn't intentional.
I got it.
But but 4 moderate Democratic senators, even if Herschel Walker loses, having four moderate Democratic senators who are willing to work with the Republicans, that's a game changer against the woke bullshit that the Democratic Party has been embracing.
And I
And
agree. And also some of the agenda, like getting rid of the filibuster, I don't think those four would be on that in any
no,
way. Like
that's
Kelly
never.
from Arizona, he pulled out a razor thin victory from a shitty candidate, a shitty opponent. So he doesn't have the stomach for this shit.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. And I think you're seeing, again, with these moderate Democrats, they're slapping down the left. You're going to see, because of the midterm results, the moderate Republicans slapping down the right. They're going to come out and go, no, you cost us the Senate. You almost cost us the House. You're done. You need to behave because we don't want you costing us the White House in 2024. And
Agreed.
and
Which is which.
right now, the only person that can keep the Republicans out of the White House in 2024 is Donald Trump.
There is no question about it. Ryan? I'm not a big fan of him, but he basically and it's increasing. The drum beats are getting louder and louder. It's the only way we lose is with the Don, and people are starting to get increasingly pissed. I can speak for myself at bullshit like an anti-Semitic Thanksgiving. Hello, and I don't believe he's an anti. I just think, what the hell are you thinking about endorsing crappy idiot candidates? The only ones that could lose. Thank you, Don. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
think it's.
I
Go ahead.
don't think he's an
No, I
anti-Semite.
didn't think you. I didn't think you.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just think he's obsessed with his own ego, and he was able to put some of it aside during his presidency to do good policies, but now it's completely out of control. Everything is about him, and it's time he stepped aside.
agreed. Let's see here. Oh, you have. I'm just looking if there's any more. Oh yeah. Well, political. You have Chris Murphy, the Mensa candidate from Connecticut, the senator from Connecticut. We have two Mensa candidates actually,
Yes.
Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Maybe you can shed a little light on some of his brainiac initiative or his proposed.
Yeah, this idiot went on
Jesus.
the Sunday morning talk shows to talk about that he thinks we should defund the police in states and counties that are protecting the Second Amendment. Okay, so he wants to penalize police for not enforcing laws that go against the Second Amendment. Now, by the same token, he is a big proponent of cities and counties not enforcing immigration laws. So he's picking and choosing his issues where where we should be protecting the law and where we shouldn't. And he's never been bright.
No, he's no, no,
He
no, no,
got
no, no.
his
He's never been. No, he has definitely never been bright. And I will go one step further. I believe he's among the dumbest, top 10 dumbest senators in the chamber,
yeah,
without a doubt.
he got into the Senate riding on gun control in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy. That has been his only issue. And the fact of the matter is, I actually know somebody who was at an event with him, and he said literally, now he didn't have to do anything because as a Democrat, he was never going to lose his seat in Connecticut.
Reflective of his great intellect. Yes,
Yeah.
I believe he did say something like that. There's no question in my mind. Um, I wanted to throw things out into a little bit of the entertainment world. We're going to talk about the changes in the woke media and entertainment business, but also as we speak, Christy McVeigh of Fleetwood Mac has just died at age 79. They're all
Yeah, I
going
just
away,
saw
aren't they?
that. Well, unfortunately, we're at that age where most of the musicians we listen to as when we were younger are 70s, 80s, and let's face it, none of these folks really took care of themselves. So unfortunately, it's coming, more and more often that we're losing the musicians of our youth.
True. I mean, 79 is not a bad run, and they always say if you remember the 1960s, you weren't there. Anyway,
Right.
so getting back to, no, let's continue to focus on the media and on the entertainment business with the new old CEO of Disney is doing kind of to some degree an about face, isn't he, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, a week and a half ago on a Sunday night, the board of directors fired the CEO of Disney and brought Bob Iger back into the CEO's position. uh, Disney is in a lot of trouble right now because, first of all, their fight against the state of Florida with the Parental Education Act did not gain them any fans. And they completely ignored their core market, which is, always was, and always will be families for their woke agenda. And they are seeing the results. Sales at the theme parks are down. They just released this past weekend, over Thanksgiving weekend, an animated movie, Strange New Worlds, and it was the second Disney animated bomb in a
What is it
row.
about? What was it about?
And
Something
it,
woke?
I yes, they put in their woke agenda in these movies, and people just went, "No, we're not going to see it." And you're seeing it more and more. People, it's go woke, go broke. And Disney is facing those headwinds because they went over the edge over the last few years. And now they've brought Bob Iger in to right the ship. And now let's face it, Bob Iger was no conservative. He was always, a liberal. But now he's going, oh, you know what? There's too much backlash. We have to right the ship. We have to not depend on these. And the big problem, and this is not just something that Disney's had, I've seen it over and over again in different companies. It's when they kowtow to a small but vocal group that aren't actually their customers. And the example I always give is there was a big push a number of years ago. People were yelling that toy companies weren't putting out enough female action figures. And Warner Brothers and Mattel teamed up. They did a whole line of Wonder Woman toys. They did a whole line of DC superhero girls toys. And when Toys R Us went out of business and you walked through the aisles of what they were trying to get rid of, it was aisle after aisle after aisle of these female action figures because the people who were complaining there weren't female action figures weren't toy buyers.
And couldn't it be just a bigger issue that I used to play with those action figures and essentially even girls, because we were talking about young people, like overall they superheroes that are just tried and true. Superman, Batman, the Flash, yeah, Wonder Woman, but no, they're mostly male, and that's part of the world. And I will say something about the ex CEO of Disney, um, a total imbecile. I'm sure. I think it's a she went to an Ivy League school, blah blah blah, got her MBA from Little Bo Peep University,
Him,
but a total moron. Okay, and she deserved to be fired because she put her own
him.
woke him. I'm sorry, his own wokeness and political ideology ahead of the shareholders. Not just a little bit, in a big way.
Well, that's possible, but as more information comes out, it wasn't actually his idea to swing woke. He actually kept his mouth shut originally when Florida passed the Parental Education Act. It was a small group of employees that pressured him into doing it, and
Okay.
he didn't have the leadership or the backbone to stand up to them and say, no, this is not what we're
Well,
doing.
that's what you're paid to do as a
Bob,
CEO.
right.
The
Bob
buck
Iger
stops
has
there.
the backbone to say, no, this is shareholder money. We're not spending it defending your woke agenda.
Yeah, I think it will take some time. Disney will recover. Maybe not a bad stock to buy because it will recover, but it's going to take. It's not going to be overnight. There's been a lot of damage done, and talk about having blinders on. When you're a family and you're not the elite, you're not the 1%. You're just a working Joe and Jane, and you bring you don't want the bullshit of some woke crap. You want to, like it's always been since the Depression of the 1930s. You go there, Fantasia, to escape reality, to have some time of just pure enjoyment. You don't want to be reminded of the shit you have to deal with every day and every day.
And that's a big part of it. But also, again, Disney forgot who their core audience is. And they jacked up the prices at the theme parks beyond what most of the middle class can afford, especially if you've got, two kids, three kids, more that you're bringing. So they cut off their core audience because they priced themselves out of competition and then tried to push this woke stuff. People just went, no, forget it. I'm done.
I would agree. Getting well, and also it's happening at CNN. Their new CEO has a holiday surprise. I think it's tomorrow. It starts tomorrow. The
Starts today.
oh, okay, because
It's
it did mention Thursday. So anyway,
yeah.
today I stand
They
corrected. But yeah,
they said it was going to start. It was going to be over today and tomorrow.
okay.
Yeah.
So is in process. Layoffs at CNN. Surprise, surprise. The only question I have for you is: it really just a complete slap in the face of Zucker?
It is because
He's a
Zucker's
shithead who
management
destroyed an
was
icon.
was terrible. And it's funny because I was listening to a comedy radio station the other day, and one of the comedians was going off, and it was an old bit about Lou Dobbs on CNN and how conservative he was and how right wing he was. And it just reminded me just how CNN really did used to be a network that had all points of view.
I
And
actually used to
Zuck,
listen to it all the time.
yeah,
Crossfire. They actually had cross.
yes,
Now they have Crossfire. They have five liberals and one senile conservative back who was relevant like in 1970. That's their idea of Crossfire.
exactly. And Jeff Zucker destroyed the network. He spent a fortune destroying the network. And now the new owners at Discovery are going, all right, we need to fix this. And it's not just CNN, it's all across what used to be Warner Brothers. They are cutting costs. So they're cutting costs at CNN. There's massive layoffs at CNN. They've cut production for HBO Max because they were just wasting money on these big budget productions that nobody was watching and they weren't making any money off of. And they've said they are a company that needs to be profitable, not unlike what Elon Musk is trying to do with Twitter. And it does amaze me how the liberal elite are so offended by businesses trying to be profitable.
God forbid. But HBO, I have a business question to ask you. Didn't they kind of miss the whole streaming? I mean, they're still latching on to 1990s technology. I know they have you can get streaming, but they kind of missed that. They missed that window a little bit. They got catching up to do.
They do have catching up to do, but they've done very well with HBO Max. And also, Discovery had Discovery Plus, which, while it had limited programming because it was just their networks, had incredible technology. And this spring, the company is actually going to be merging the two services. So you're going to get the breadth of programming that HBO Max has, the technology that Discovery has, and I think they're actually going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Very good. I'm glad I asked the question. Um, we have also goodbye, Nancy. Well, before you leave CNN, the new CEO has basically said, "I love this. I think it's again another slap at Zucker. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He'll probably get a position, a fellowship at Harvard." But anyway, he said, "No more 24/7 Trump."
Yeah, because he knows that was the death knell. When
God.
I mean, and it's absolutely amazing that CNN and MSNBC, to be fair, focused on Trump to the exclusion of everything else. And now they've got nothing to talk about. Rachel Maddow at this moment is being sued because she literally made up news.
Well, let me ask you a question about MSNBC. The only thing I would say about MSNBC, that's for the true believers. They never pretended. I mean, first of all, anyone who watches it, I'm really sorry. I mean, you need to basically take some kind of a standardized test to see if you're basically 100 IQ or above. It's just gobbledygook, but they don't pretend to be anything else but gobbledygook. CNN was a real news network that got destroyed. Your view? Your
Yeah,
thoughts?
CNN was a real news network. They covered stories, they covered them in depth. MSNBC does not pretend to be a news network, although they do say they're a news network.
Yeah, okay.
But actually, in the Rachel Maddow lawsuit that I just mentioned, her defense, she actually put forward to the judge that the case should be thrown out because she can say whatever she wants because it's just her opinion. And the judge actually threw her argument out saying, no, what you said was presented as fact. You can't now say it's opinion.
Oh, I think
So,
every night she just winged it. It was actually smoke a joint and listen to her and basically curl up in a ball with laughter. It was like every Donald Trump is an alien Nazi that came from the planet Jupiter. It was like really, it got more bizarre as time went on, and their audience increased accordingly
well, because they
until
were
the end.
yeah, they were leaving CNN because CNN had gotten so bad. So the true believers went to MSNBC. Everybody else, basically based on the ratings, went to Fox News.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I think for the good of the country, the good of our democracy, MSNBC will never get the message, hopefully. And I don't want another, we don't need another Fox or another
No,
Newsman. Just something that we talked about years ago in terrestrial radio. A really great opportunity, usually being stuck in the middle, according to Dr. Porter from Harvard's, not good. But in the news business, if you had like, if you just resurrected the 1990 version of CNN, fine. I think people are looking
yes,
for that. They're
yes,
not looking for Sean Hannity.
where they covered all the angles. They had the liberal point of view, they had the conservative point of view, they had the centrist point of view. They covered a story impartially. And if they can get back to that, that would be fantastic. And honestly, I believe if they could get back to that and bring in real journalists, they'll leave MSNBC in the dust and they can probably beat Fox in the
A
ratings
thousand percent
because
agree.
people are looking for actual news.
Yes, if they turn that corner, the world is their oyster, as they say. Let's look at before we get into some economic news, the Qatar World Cup. Um, Kind of bizarre. Don't know how it actually even occurred. I mean, you talk about boycotting Georgia. I know it's only the United States over the voting legislation. Essentially, basically you couldn't display any pro-gay sentiment. People who built the complexes, not all of them, obviously, but there was no safety. I think hundreds died in the process. Very interesting, very bizarre. I wouldn't actually think it was the funnest event. Budweiser was a big sponsor, and the last moment, Qatar actually pulled the plug on any alcohol consumption. Sounds like a fun event I want to go to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people with this, but I honestly think the reason that liberals aren't more outraged, why Americans aren't more outraged, is because it's soccer. The vast majority of America couldn't care less about the World Cup.
Can I interject something on that because it's interesting? Being older than you, unfortunately, but it does beat the alternative. I remember from the '70s, always been soccer. It's right here. It's going to happen right
Yes.
now. It's just, you got Pele, you got
Yeah.
whatever they were called.
If
The
yeah,
generals. I forgot what their name was, and it's going to happen. That's 40 years of
yeah,
it's going to happen. It's going to happen, but it
if
never quite happens, does it?
if if Pele couldn't make soccer popular in America, nobody can. I mean, yes, there are more young people playing soccer, but it doesn't translate into fans for professional soccer. It and I'll be honest, I've said this over and over again. Even I understand kids like to play it, but I always thought of soccer as soccer was the game for kids that couldn't hit a baseball.
There you go.
You know,
And also, playing it is one thing. Watching, I just watched. I painted my basement, and I watched the paint dry as I was watching
right.
the World Cup, and there was really no difference. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
zero
it's the same
zero. I
thing.
mean, really.
I know loads of people that love playing golf. Very few of them actually watch something
I
though. They'll
concur with that. I love golf. Watching, yeah, you go over to your friend's house, you're shooting the breeze, but to
yeah,
actually
it's
sit there for 4 hours and watch it, they're on the eighth green. Oh God, please get a respirator. Back to the economy, or now we're going into the economy. Well, before we do one thing, goodbye, Nancy. Hello, Mr. Jeffries. One nutcase for another, essentially, correct?
yeah, I mean it's meet
A
the new
election denier, by the way.
yeah, it's meet the new boss same as the old boss.
Perfectly said.
And it goes to show the lack of a bench that the
Yes.
Democratic Party has. And they need to bring in more centrists, more younger centrists to turn this around. And the more they keep kowtowing to the woke socialists, that's not going to happen.
And by the way, he's a man of, let's say, not the highest talent. So I think Nancy, for all her shortcomings, she was basically out of her mind at the end. But she was a good tactician to some degree. This guy's got no game. We'll see how it goes.
No,
In the
for
economic news,
yeah, for
go ahead.
everything we have said about Nancy Pelosi and all the negatives she had, she was a grand master of a politician. She knew the art of politics like nobody.
And investing. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's another
Well,
issue. Yes, I would agree with that. Getting back to the economy, recession question mark. Job growth was only 127, well below expectations. However, Dr. Lopkin, the third quarter revisited GDP, it was actually almost 3%.
almost. It was 2.9% GDP, which was a oh, I don't want to say it was a strong number because prior to the pandemic, we were having much better numbers.
A
But
good number
given
by any
it is,
stretch
yes,
of the
but
imagination.
it is a very good number.
And
Unfortunately, most economists don't think we're going to be able to hold it up. And there have been a number of reports over the past week and a half saying we could be in for a recession as strong as the one in the 1970s in the middle of next year.
Oh, those are many economists. Yeah, this might be just a tempest in a teapot before the shit hits the fan. I concur with that because all the signs, inflation, deficit spending, job numbers, all that are not looking good. But maybe timing is everything. If fat ass Trump gets his butt out of the way and some of these things actually occur, Republicans, I think it's looking good for them if Donald removes
It,
himself
well,
or is removed.
if he gets out of the way, but I think more importantly, Congress could actually make things better with a Republican controlled House and a combined Republican minority in the Senate with the moderate Democrats. Again, we said earlier, four of them have already stepped up and said, no, enough is enough. We can't keep going down this path in regards to the border. If they do the same thing with the economics, with the spending, they may be able to get things through. Now, they don't have the votes to overturn any vetoes. But if Biden gets the message from his own party saying, no, enough is enough, maybe we can actually turn things around. Now,
The only
I
quintessential
honest,
point they'll
I,
have is, can he get any message?
yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think they're going to be able to push anything past him. But I think if enough Democrats step up and go, no, we've got to step away from the brink. Again, the radicals in the Republican Party have to be pushed aside, and the Republicans need to step away from Trump and focus on what's going on in the country. The radicals in the Democratic Party need to be pushed aside, and the moderates in the Democratic Party have to go, no, we've got to do what's good for the country. They need to stop attacking their own sides, talking about dinos and rhinos, Democrats in name only,
Yeah,
Republicans in name only. You are not in office to serve your party. You are in office to serve the American people, and it's time both sides started doing their jobs.
I would agree with all of that. Last topic of discussion, in, again, I guess political slash economic front, or maybe reverse, the rail strike. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Lopkin? Political ramifications, economic ramifications, and probability.
Well, economic ramifications are huge.
Huge, yes.
If there's a rail strike, we already don't have enough truck drivers to fill the need that we have with the rails. Without the rails working with a strike, if you thought you saw supply chain issues before, you're in for you ain't seen nothing yet. Politically, it looks really bad for Biden because prior to the election, he was going, oh, we've avoided the strike, we negotiated, and now he turned to Congress and go, well, you guys deal with it.
Okay, guys, I need to
I,
interject something. Isn't it bigger than that? One thing I'll just say, kind of a flippant point, is how about Mayor Pete? Why can't he solve it? He's the expert. But anyway, obviously that was a joke. But isn't this really indicative of what's going to be happening over the next year? Oops! I thought I told you so. I mean, everything was great. No recession, no supply chain, strike is averted, and all these chickens are going to come home to roost, aren't they?
yeah, and you're already starting to see it. A couple of Democrats in the both the Senate and the House have actually come out talking about investigating TikTok as a Chinese surveillance tool. And they've actually come out and went, you know what? Trump was right. Now you're looking at Biden going, oh, we took care of all that. No, you didn't take care of it. For months, they've been saying, for more than months, oh, the border is secure. And now you've got the Democratic senators coming out and saying, no, the border's not secure. You need to do something about it. So you're starting to see that his entire presidency,
Is a
the
house of
truth
cards.
is it's a house of cards. The truth is coming out, and I think it's only going to be made worse as the Hunter Biden investigations go forward and we find out what the big guy was really up to.
That's going to be splendid. That's popcorn material. I know you're, really getting back into great shape, Dr. Lopkin, but sometimes a popcorn break is worth it. Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Thank our listeners, and we can be heard in many places, and our listeners can give their input, can't they, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, let us know your opinion on the issues, what you've heard here, or what you want us to discuss. Go to exvadio.com/connect. That's exvadio.com/connect. You can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at the Carnivore Radio website at exvadio.com/podcasts, at the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lockman, and thank our listeners.
We'll see you next time.